Well, Kelly's Court is back in session. On the docket today, drug testing welfare recipients. Florida's Republican Governor Rick Scott signing a controversial new law that requires welfare recipients down in Florida to submit samples for narcotic screening before they can get the benefits. Governor Scott says the goal is to avoid wasting taxpayers' money by giving handouts to people who would blow the money on getting high. Problem is, so far only 2% of those would-be welfare recipients have tested positive. That could save the state about $100,000, but they say the costs estimated with this program have been predicted to be about $178 million. Critics like the ACLU say they are planning to sue, charging that the policy is unconstitutional. So, do they have a point? Let's ask our panel, defense attorney Mark Eiglarsh and former prosecutor Arthur Aidala. All right, so only 2% apparently are actually testing positive, and the ACLU is all up in arms saying he's targeting the poor in a way that's discriminatory, that's unfair to the poor, and basically, Mark, they say it violates their Fourth Amendment right to be free from unreasonable searches. Are they right?
They are right. And putting aside for a second those who think that it's a good idea, you don't get past the legal scrutiny. You look at Chandler versus Miller. Courts have decided this.
Supreme Court.
1997. What you've got is you've got a Supreme Court case. What you're doing is you are doing a test of someone's urine without suspicion. That's a very guarded class. And in this particular case, what the court found was you can't just randomly search the urine of those who want to run for state office because, again, there's no suspicion. These aren't people who work in sensitive positions or high-risk jobs. It's just a random group of people where only 2% apparently failed the drug test.
Well, the legal test, Arthur, is that there has to be a special, if you're going to do a suspicionless drug test, there has to be a special need.
Nothing special here.
For example, they've okayed the testing of high school athletes because they think there's a special need to protect children on the football field from other children who are on drugs. Is there a special need in testing welfare recipients?
Well, I think the argument would be on behalf of the taxpayers who are giving the money, who are providing the monies for the welfare. And absolutely.
Businessmen get state contracts, farmers get subsidies. Well, how are they any different from welfare recipients? We don't require farmers to do drug tests.
There's a huge difference between a farmer who's out there working, tilling the fields. There's a huge difference between a guy who's got a business and he gets a state contract than someone who's saying, look, I'm really down on my luck.
It's state money. We're going to require that everybody be drug-free who gets state money. Why not test everybody?
Because you want to make sure that the money that they're getting, that the people who are receiving welfare is not being used on drugs. It's being used for food.
Okay.
It's being used for housing.
Fair enough.
It's using for their children's welfare.
Fair enough. But, Mark, I ask you, do the statistics show that poor people are any more drug addicted than rich people?
Not with the latest statistics we've gotten here. Literally 2%, which means 96% are passing this. And now, Florida, my taxpayers' dollars have to pay back the test that each person took. So $30, about 1,000 to 1,500 people per month are taking and passing the test. We're talking about $30,000 to $40,000 we're now giving back to those who are taking the test.
Well, here's the thing. But, Arthur, let me just throw this at you. Governor Scott has said that people on welfare use drugs at a higher rate. That's what he claimed in justifying this law. Apparently, the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse says that there is no significant difference in the rate of illegal drug use by welfare applicants and the other people. Arthur, do the latest statistics not suggest that's right? Only 2% are testing positive down there, and the Florida taxpayers are now going to have to reimburse this, all these costs.
Okay, so let's just say at this point it's only 2%. And he was wrong in his premise. It still has to do with the welfare recipients apparently don't have a job. So they're using the state money to buy the drugs. That's the difference. That's the disconnect between a state agency who's getting awarded a contract, a worker who's getting awarded a contract.
Well, how far could you take that, Arthur? Could you then say anybody who gets unemployment benefits also needs to drug test? Because I will tell you what, that has been proposed by one Ohio state senator. He wants to introduce a bill in Ohio to make the unemployed take a drug test.
And what is wrong with the commonsensical aspect aspect of that type of law. It's the same thing. Look, I'll make it so simple.
How about pensions? Should people be able to get their state-funded pensions without taking a drug test?
That's different. They worked for those pensions. They put in their time, effort, and energy. Welfare is a handout. Let's just call it what it is, and it's a privilege.
Arthur.
It's not a right. The same way when a cop stops you from driving, which is a privilege and not a right, and you refuse to blow, you lose your license. You refuse to give your urine, you lose your money. It's the same concept.
How about that, Mark?
You know, Arthur, in theory, it all sounds wonderful. The program costs $178 million. They're expected to save maybe $40,000 to $80,000. You do the math.
Okay.
Well, but that speaks to sort of whether it's working, whether it's a good idea, which is also what we're discussing. But legally, is that relevant?
Well,
Mark?
isn't that the purpose, to save money? But wait, isn't that the purpose? Governor Scott said the purpose of the program is to save money.
Well, he doesn't want the Florida taxpayers to be funding somebody's drug habit.
Thank you.
Right. No, in theory, sure, that makes sense. 2% failed it, so it doesn't save money. Secondly, legally, you start adding up the cost of attorney's fees to fight this case.
Oh, so
about
what? You
it.
can't, Judge Kelly, you can't make decisions on policy based on what the ACLU's lawsuit is going to cost to fight. Where it comes down to a fundamental thing. If people are going to say, I need help, I need a handout, then if you want the money, that's fine. Then you got to do what we require you to do. And we just want to make sure you're not using it on drugs.
Well, apparently,
you're using
if
it for
you
the right
fail
thing.
the test, you're denied welfare for a year until you take another test and you test clean. So that's, I mean, you are disadvantaged.
Failed.
Well,
There's
that's a
question
big
about
incentive.
what parents are doing, but they're, if they're on drugs. Anyway, guys, good debate.
Thanks, Judge.
One final word for our viewers. The law requires that suspicionless drug testing like this be justified by a special need. For example, like when customs agents who deal with drug dealers are forced to take drug tests. That's been upheld by the courts. Here, I see no special need to test the poor. Studies show that they do not use drugs a significant amount more than the wealthy. The results in Florida seem to confirm that so far. My prediction, if the ACLU sues over this law, it'll win on this one. We'll be right back.